So, what if your deepest, most constant feeling was this bone deep terror of being alone? And I don't just mean loneliness, but this genuine core belief that you actually couldn't survive it. Let's explore what that's really like through one person's story. And that's not a metaphor. The person whose story we're following here, she truly felt that if a partner left, she would physically just cease to exist. It's an existential fear that shaped every single day of her life. Just imagine living with that level of intensity, that constant, quiet panic, and just thinking it was a personality quirk, thinking it was just you. For years, that's exactly what it was for her, a paralyzing fear that didn't even have a name. So let's start right there. In that time before a diagnosis, when all these confusing and painful behaviors were just a part of daily life.
Wow. I mean, this is such a powerful image, right? It's not about being indecisive about breakfast. It's about a complete outsourcing of your own desires, your own needs. Your internal operating system literally requires someone else's input to even function. That is the level of paralysis we're talking about.
And this is how the mind protects itself. You can see how the narrator didn't see this as a problem. She rationalized it. This wasn't fear. No, it was just being a good partner. This wasn't a loss of self, it was love. And this brilliant illusion is precisely why a disorder like this can hide in plain sight for so long.
But, eventually that illusion had to shatter. So let's move to the moment when decades of confusion were finally given a name. A diagnosis that, well, it explained everything.
So here it is, the clinical definition: dependent personality disorder. This isn't just about being a little needy in a relationship. It's an all-encompassing condition. The keywords here are pervasive and excessive. It's a need so profound that it dictates your every move. And this really illustrates that point. For the narrator, it wasn't just about her boyfriend. It was staying in a job she hated because her manager felt safe. It was being literally unable to book her own doctor's appointments. It was what she ordered at restaurants. It seeps into every single corner of life. The official diagnostic manual, the DSM-5, it has a checklist, right? And the narrator's experience just ticked every single box. The difficulty making decisions, needing others to take the lead, that absolute terror of disagreeing with someone because you're scared they'll leave. These aren't just quirks. They form a recognized clinical pattern. So the natural question is, where does something like this even come from? And the answer is pretty fascinating, honestly, because it completely reframes the entire condition. This is so important to understand. DPD isn't a sign of weakness or some kind of moral failing. It's a brilliant survival strategy that was developed in childhood that it got stuck on repeat. The nervous system was trying to protect you, but the software was never updated for adult life.
Research suggests there are two main pathways. So on one side, you might have a super overprotective environment where a child is never taught to trust themselves. And on the other, you could have an environment that was so unsafe, you learn that clinging to a caregiver was the only way to survive. For a lot of people, like the narrator, it's actually a mix of both.
Okay, so now we see how this childhood coping skill creates a deeply destructive pattern in adult relationships. And this is where it gets really complicated. This cycle shows the just cruel irony of DPD. It all starts with an intense fear of being left. That fear drives clinging, submissive behaviors, all meant to keep the person close. But over time, that pressure often pushes the partner away. And when they leave, the core fear is confirmed. See, I knew I couldn't survive on my own. It's a devastating, self-fulfilling loop. And to avoid that feeling of abandonment, a pattern called replacement attachment often kicks in. It's this desperate, urgent search for a new person, the moment a relationship ends. Because being untethered, even for a little while, feels genuinely unsurvivable. But that cycle, it can be broken. It's not easy, and it's definitely not fast, but recovery is possible. So let's look at what building a new, independent foundation actually looks like. This timeline, it just provides so much hope. For the narrator, it all began at age 28. The diagnosis came about 6 months later. And look at this milestone. 3 years into therapy, at age 31, she moved into her own apartment for the very first time. It just goes to show that change, while it's gradual, is absolutely achievable. I find this so incredibly relatable. That dual feeling when you finally get an answer. On one hand, there's this incredible relief. You're not just broken.
There's a reason for all of it. And on the other hand, there's the crushing weight of knowing that now the real work has to begin.
So what does that work actually look like? If any of this is resonating with you, maybe for yourself or someone you know, where do you even begin?
Well, there are a few really crucial places to start. First, if this feels familiar, it's so important to seek out a therapist who specializes in this area. Second, for partners, you have to remember that telling someone to just be more independent is like telling them to just walk on a broken leg. The path forward is through compassion and support. And third, for anyone in the thick of it, make one tiny decision for yourself today without asking anyone else.
And that's really the secret, isn't it? It will feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel scary. But that discomfort, that's the feeling of a new muscle being built. That feeling is the sound of your independence growing. The goal isn't to eliminate the discomfort, but to learn to sit with it. And that kind of brings us to our final thought. After exploring the depths of this disorder, which is so wrapped up in the fear of abandonment, it really begs a bigger question for all of us. How often do we mistake a desperate need not to be alone for genuine, fulfilling love? It's something worth thinking about.